just so we know that I do have it on. It wasn't on before. I do have a prayer request. If you would please remember, as you go to bed tonight or as you get up in the morning, Josh and Rebecca leave for a missions trip to Thailand. Their flight leaves from Johnson City at 7:40 in the morning. So if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm sure they would greatly appreciate it as well.
Are they our time? Or
That is our time. Yeah, they are on our time. They're not very far over. They're pretty straight up. And then that trip will be concluding on the 21st, on the 20th. But Josh and Rebecca are staying in Thailand for an additional week. Josh has been on this trip once before, and he wanted Rebecca to experience it and thought that it'd be a good place for them to have a few days together. So this evening, I want to jump back into the Gospel of John, and I've done this a little differently. We're going to start in chapter 6. We've gotten through the end of chapter 5. We're going to start in chapter 6, but I want to start out with four things that make this, four things in this chapter that make it Wesleyan Arminian. I was looking at Bible studies, and I ended up with one that wasn't. So we've gone through and looked at it, and I thought it was a good opportunity for us to kind of jump into some of these kinds of things. So, can you define for me? And it's okay if you can't. This one's probably the easiest of all of them, of the four. Can you define for me what we mean by prevenient grace? And if you need to use a Calvinist understanding of grace as your part of your definition, then you can do that.
Grace that allows us to recognize our need for a Savior.
Okay. When we say open the eyes of my heart, that's a very Wesleyan Arminian song, because that's all about prevenient grace. Open the eyes of my heart so that I can see what you've done for me. In a pure Calvinist understanding of that concept, the grace is an irresistible grace. If you're supposed to be, then it's going to happen. Which I find interesting when we think about some of the terminology we use in the church, some of the terminology we use in the music that we use. If you happen to be Calvinist, then Open the Eyes of My Heart is kind of a strange song. Does that make sense? Theologically?
so they don't think that we all have prevenient grace.
No. Prevenient grace is a Wesleyan Arminian concept that, and the reason we're doing this now is because the chapter that we're in tonight hits these points. There are some points in there where one verse or two we look at differently.
But you would have all to be saved.
Well, that's part of what we're looking at. What, Travis?
Don't they look at prevenient grace as only for the elect? They refer to the elect?
If they don't use the terminology prevenient grace is a Wesleyan Arminian terminology because it's grace that goes before. If they were to say something about it, they would probably say, but that's only for those who are already destined to go that way.
That's also why, as long as they can get you to say a prayer, you're good. There is no drawing of it. There is no Holy Spirit pushing this person, softening the heart, opening the ears so that they're ready to hear the gospel and respond. No, all you have to do is say the prayer and you'll be all right.
I wish Mike and Betty were here this evening because I'd really like to ask them how how Catholicism dealt with that concept. Because if I understand it correctly, Catholicism sounds very much the same in that respect. Say a particular prayer.
Do they even have a prayer to say?
They do.
Catholicism seems like you go through catechism you go through the classes, you're good to go.
Well, but at the end of classes, you say, yes, this is what I believe. That's the prayer. This is what I believe. That's what I understand.
Prayer, you just
Confirmation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. The other C word.
Your first Holy Communion when you're a child, and then you have your confirmation after you've gone through your catechism.
Right.
So it's a series of rites or rituals rather than an actual prayer.
Yeah. About 12? Is it about 12?
First Communion, I was in elementary school, so under 10.
Oh, okay. So
Wow.
before you get to 10.
And then confirmation, I think I was 14,
Oh, okay. So as a teenager?
15.
I think a lot of people in the American church fail to study the Bible thoroughly for themselves.
Yeah.
And so you go to church and that's your time that you give to God. And so when you read his word, when I grew up in the Baptist church mostly,
You're not the only former Baptist sitting in here.
doesn't line up. It just doesn't line up with the heart of God, their theology. But I think a lot of people who are in the Baptist church haven't, a lot of them probably don't even know the theology behind it, unfortunately.
Too many of our people all across the board don't know anything about theology.
Yeah. Which is part of the reason that I want to do something like this.
They're more of a group setting. They're all good. They don't have to do anything. Where Calvinist, Wesleyan, we are more about the personal relationship and what we need to do to be saved.
I have been wrong before, but I think that most Baptists that we understand are also Calvinists, but I could be wrong. I've said that before, and someone said, "Oh no, we're not Calvinist. We believe in, irresistible grace." And okay, that's Calvinist.
The
we-
Free Will Baptists would say the
Free Will Baptist. I was at a Free Will Baptist church. We were for a few years, so I do understand that, and that is the main point of difference with Calvinism, is that we have free will, which means we can resist it. It is resistible grace that we need to receive. It doesn't simply happen whether we like it or not. Now, when we go way back, oh goodness, the name just zipped right out of my head. Starts with an A. One of the early,
Arminius?
no, further back than that.
Augustine,
Yes, he wrote the
confession.
level.
He
Yeah,
wrote a lot of stuff.
yeah, and I think he's the one that wrote the levels of hell thing, and
That's Dante, wasn't it?
that was Dante. Maybe he referenced part of that, but that Dante did the levels of hell.
7 levels of hell.
I feel like Augustine did something similar with heaven. That's what I'm thinking about. Anyway, Augustine was the son of very wealthy parents. And he used their wealth when he was a young man to do whatever he wanted.
Not good stuff.
He was a hedonistic heathen. And he felt like when he came to Christ, it was an irresistible, this was going to happen whether I wanted it or not. And that's how he spoke of it. So to be fair,
Augustine said that.
Augustine, yeah. So to be fair, some of the earliest theology in the church leaned in the direction of an irresistible grace. Now, when I say earliest theology, I'm talking about post-biblical, because what we read in the early teachers in the New Testament, Peter, Paul, James, what we read doesn't seem to be an irresistible grace. That make sense up to that point?
Yeah, but at the same time, God doesn't save people in the same way.
Augustine,
There are some people that spend their whole life in sin, and then they change in an instant.
yeah,
And there are others that we've heard tell that they ran. And they ran from it, and they ran from it until God finally said, you can't run anymore. You have a choice to make now.
I suppose as I've gotten a little older,
Paul?
I wonder, pardon? As I've gotten a little
Well, and if
older,
you
I
think about it-
thought there may be some mash of things that aren't quite as distinct as we want to make them.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can't blanket, just like we can't blanket healing. We can't blanket, I mean,
The Apostle Paul was met with the irresistible grace.
yes,
already in Damascus.
yeah. Yeah, when you said that, I thought, oh,
And
yeah.
that's one thing, like,
Paul was a complete 180. God got a hold
But
of him.
Peter,
Yeah.
Jesus said, "Come follow me." It was his choice.
Yeah, so,
But he's created us all differently.
and he knows what each of us need to respond. So to say that, for Augustine to say, this is how it happened for me, and for somebody else to run with that, that must be how it happens, is not the way we should be looking at it.
Augustine was one of the first real theologians of the church. Initially, there was a move in the earliest church that we needed to be careful not to intellectualize following Christ. We didn't need to think too hard about it, to dig too deeply into that. It was a spiritual.
And it's only
It was
about faith.
it was an experience by faith. Yeah, and so we didn't want to intellectualize it. Well, Augustine was one of the ones that went through and said, okay, this is this, and goes through all the different
I
points.
can't remember the
More of
name
a
the
systematic
song.
theology.
It was Corey Asbury, I remember that. I don't remember the name of the song. But there have been discussions over the line that he can break down any wall.
Hmm.
And people take that as
Um,
the wall, and he can't break down the wall that you put up in front of your heart, which is a metaphorical wall. But I'm here to tell you, he breaks down that wall too. Because I lived it. I tried to run, and every time I was in a ditch, there he was. Every time I was at my lowest point, there he was.
They'll break down any wall we allow them to.
Yeah.
We're still running into the same
Well,
same
I
obstacle.
think about the verse where it talks about you can sear your conscience as with a hot iron.
Yes.
And if you continue to say no to God, you continue to get farther and farther away. I think that's the danger you run.
Quench the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Where he just stops pursuing you. But that's really what you want.
If that's really what you want,
Yeah.
I'll give that to you. I'll let you have it.
I have a high school friend who I very specifically said, you're not hurting my feelings. You're not telling me no. You're denying Jesus Christ. And he said, I know. And yeah,
That does sound awfully.
because
callously
from
dangerous.
that moment on, I have not been able to witness to him. I'm not allowed to witness to him.
There have been times, I apologize, I left my drink back here. There have been times when I've felt like I couldn't pray for someone,
Yeah.
as if they'd made a decision,
Yeah.
and at least for whatever time, that wasn't a possibility. So, let me go ahead and read what this specifically says about prevenient grace. God's grace goes before all human response, restoring to every person the freedom and ability to turn toward God. No one comes to Christ by unaided human will, but neither does anyone come by irresistible compulsion. Grace enables the human will freely respond or refuse. So that's the definition that I found for prevenient grace. So let's move to the other three here, because we may discuss something other there. We believe in this. I'm saying these things so you know what we believe as members of the Church of the Nazarene. We believe in universal atonement. That doesn't mean that everybody gets saved. It means instead, excuse me, that Christ gave his life for the life of the world. And actually, we're in chapter 6, and chapter 6 has 60 verses, but in verse 51, it says he gave us his flesh for the life of the world. Not for a limited, pre-selected group of unconditionally elect, but for every human being without exception. The invitation is genuinely offered to all, for God so loved the world.
Should we say hallelujah in here?
I would think. Well, I understand a Calvinist view of that would say that those who aren't elect, they don't seek the Lord. So it's not that they want to come and don't and are unable. It's that they simply don't. They don't want to. They don't come because they don't want to. And so the choice is made ahead of time. That's a very, very difficult concept for me to wrap my head around.
Doesn't
Not
that take our seeking?
intellectually, but spiritually.
Doesn't that take our seeking out of the equation?
Well, for us, as members of the Church of the Nazarene, we believe in universal atonement, so that it is available to everyone. In Calvinism, it says that there are a select few being, millions nonetheless, but there are a select few who, from the foundation of the world, were going to be saved. And those who weren't in that number don't seek after Christ and miss it. They simply don't.
They
They
just
simply
don't
don't.
seek after Christ.
They don't seek.
Do Calvinists send missionaries?
Yes.
They do.
They do. I mean, why?
Well, part of what Catherine said
It's already
earlier,
settled.
you-
You can't
part of
do
what
anything
Catherine said
about it.
earlier is,
Well-
you say the prayer, and you want to get as many people to say the prayer as possible, and that's true in
But then-
camps and things like that too.
Are the
Because you don't know. We don't know.
Are
Nobody
they
has a
selected?
We
sign.
don't know who
Seeking?
the select is, who
Right.
the elect
are the
is.
select even seeking? Why would they have to?
But they also fully believe that Jesus Christ won't come back until the gospel is preached to all nations. So they send people out to preach.
So part of that motivation is
Yeah.
to make sure that the conditions of
Yes.
Christ's return are there.
Amen.
Okay.
That's part of how they are ensuring that they are doing their part to bring him back.
That was an interesting sticking point with the men's movement from about 25 years ago, Promise Keepers,
Yeah.
because the leadership of that had made it clear at some point that they believe that we are going to bring about Christ's kingdom on earth. And that's actually a different one of the views of millennialism, that it's going to be here and it's going to start. It doesn't start with the rapture. It starts when we get the world ready
Make the world good enough.
for it.
So
Yes,
promise
basically.
keepers with kingdom now?
Some of their leadership, and it's kind of why they fell off the radar a lot, because so many different denominations were involved. Because getting men, in love with Jesus is a very, very amazingly wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But with some of the leadership making some statements, some churches and denominations felt like this is, that part of it's a little questionable. So,
Yeah.
it's just probably similar to things with the chosen. There are some people who look at it and say, well, there are extra biblical stuff there, so we're not supposed to watch any of the chosen because it's terrible. Or they have people that are not Christians on their staff, or they're even playing prominent roles or whatever, and we shouldn't follow that.
Some of those people have been saved because of their part in the show.
I'm just trying to be the balance here for the what is being said or what has been said.
You're doing good.
So the third one is entire sanctification. We believe, as members of the Church of the Nazarene, and I am using that specifically because we're not Nazarenes, we are members of the Church of the Nazarene. The Nazarene is Jesus, not us. Entire sanctification, following justification. And justification is what happens when he calls us, he draws us to him, and we say, yes, I want to follow you. He forgives us of our sin. And we're like, whoo, whoopee, That's justification. Sanctification follows that. For some people, follows very quickly, almost immediately. For others, it's a lot longer time. But God offers a second definite work of grace, entire sanctification, in which the heart is cleansed from inbred sin and filled with perfect love toward God and neighbor. In the language of the chapter that we're going through, being completely filled, never hungering, and never thirsting points toward that grace, being filled with that grace. And that's some of the language that we run into in chapter 6. So that's why I wanted to point those things out. Fourth one is, you've already alluded to it over there, is the real possibility of apostasy. Grace freely received may be freely abandoned. The departure of disciples in verse 66 of what we're getting ready to study is treated in the Wesleyan Arminian tradition as a genuine falling away, a sobering warning that perseverance in holiness requires continuing cooperation with grace, not presumption upon some single past experience. In other words, that prayer that you said wasn't enough for the rest of your life. It's not that Christ's payment for sin was not enough. It is that in order for us to stay in relationship with him, we need to keep wanting and endeavoring to stay in relationship with him. That make sense?
It's not your get out of jail free card.
Exactly.
Do you trade in?
Wow, I'm so glad I said that prayer. Now I can do whatever I want. Yeah, that's not it. Questions? Comments?
It reminded
I
me
doubt very
of-
seriously we'll get through 60
my-
verses tonight. I'm not crazy. But
It reminded me of my devotional today, although that's not one of the things that they used, specifically John 6, but they did use, I just lost it, Acts 2, 1-4, Ephesians, Genesis, Mark 16, 7, Acts 4, and they all talk about being filled.
which points toward what Wesley referred to as perfect love, not perfect as in without fault, but perfect as in a love that is from the right motivation, from the motivation that is the right motivation. So we don't love for what we selfishly get out of it. We went on a missions trip last week, and we did some really good things for people. If our motivation was that people patted us on the back or people looked at us and said, "Oh, Jeremy, you're such a great person." If that's our motivation, that's very different than going and loving because Jesus paid the price for all of those people as well. We want them to know Jesus, and we want to help make that getting to know Jesus
We're supposed to
in that
show
community better.
It's basically the Pharisee's prayer. He's received his reward.
I'm glad I'm not like that sinner over there. Yeah. So, this passage in chapter 6 illuminates the grace of God as universal in its reach, free in its offer, transforming in its depth, and serious in its demands. So you get those four different things, right? It's universal in its reach. It's for everyone. It's free. We don't earn it, pay for it. Christ did all of that stuff. It's free gift. But it's transforming. Sanctification. It does change us. And it has serious demands that we have to walk the walk. Okay? We good? Any other questions? Let's look at the first 6 verses. John chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. Somebody want to read that for us?
After these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great multitude followed him, because they saw his miracles which he did on them that were diseased. And Jesus went up into a mountain, and there he sat with his disciples, and the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. When Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he said unto Philip, Whence shall we buy bread, that these may eat? And this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do.
Thank you. We'll pause there. Obviously, that's not the end of that account, but that's where we're going to pause for a moment. So, what about these 6 verses points us to the deity of Christ or the humanity of Christ? Because remember, John chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. And we get the very beginning of the fact that he is fully God and fully man. So, what in these 6 verses reminds us that he is fully God? And what in these verses reminds us that he is fully man?
verse 5 and 6. Where he says, Where shall we buy bread that they may eat? But he was just teasing because he knew where the bread was coming from.
That's true.
I actually see that as his humanity, because he has to eat, and he knows people have to eat.
That is a part that points out his humanity.
Now, we know
He
the rest-
understood that
we know the
eating
rest
was
of the
necessary.
story, yeah,
We
we
do.
know the rest of the story.
We
so
do.
We know that he's asking facetiously. You know.
Well, if it's,
Well,
Verse 6 says that he
facetiously
said
or
was the
just to get
To-
his
yeah,
disciples
to-
to learn to trust him.
I
for
He knew
more.
what was on their heart, you know, and we get in the other gospels where they ask him, what are we gonna do to feed these people? You know, so, just like when he,
Do you think the disciples were saying, there's no way we could feed these people? I mean, Jesus, send them home, but there's no way we can take care of them. And they did say that according to the other gospels.
They were all there on purpose just because he was not a normal human. I don't know if they all thought that he was God, but they knew that he was special, different. He could heal people.
Yeah.
They followed him because they saw his signs, which he performed on those who were diseased.
Mm-hmm. It is the miracles. That's what they were following. They saw the miracles that he did.
Yeah.
So if we're thinking about the deity of Christ, that he is fully God as well as fully man, which part of those verses reminds us of that deity?
The miracles.
The miracles.
Verse 2.
He'd been doing miracles, that's for sure. Here's another piece. Do you think he literally knew what they were thinking, what the disciples were thinking?
yeah, I do.
There's a chosen line. You don't have to be divine in order to know what you're thinking.
For some of us, what you're thinking is written all over your face. Yeah, or
Exactly.
yeah, for any situation. So it doesn't always require that.
Uh-huh.
But
People look at you like you're crazy.
okay. So prevenient grace. God's grace goes before us, which enables every human being to respond to God without compelling them. What ways can you trace God's drawing work in your life before you ever consciously turn to him? Before you said, man, my life's a mess. I wish God could do something about it, or I wish somebody could do something about it. Before.
I think one of the things that he loves to do is he places people in our paths.
Debbie talks about her mother-in-law, David's mom.
Or I should say his people in our paths.
Yeah. What other ways?
Some of the prevenient grace is the mess that he allows to come on.
And why would the mess point us toward his grace?
I can't do this. I've done this and I've made a mess of it.
This is all falling apart. I think for a lot of us, we don't like to admit that we can't do it ourselves. I've talked to the guys before in our men's meetings, the different men's meetings we've done, that a lot of times we, especially men, not exclusively, but especially men, we're determined we can do it. You can fill in the blank with whatever it is, but we're determined we can do it. And that becomes a real issue when we run into the mess of our lives. And it's like, I can't do this. I can't fix this. I can't make it better. I can't undo. I think that's why many times we've had men who were unconcerned about church and following Christ, whose wives were part of the church who followed Jesus and finally said, okay, our marriage is done. And the man would come and say, oh, I need something that'll fix that problem. And so we'll come to the altar and ask God to save them, because if I ask God to save me, then I'm fixing the problem in my marriage. Though that's not going to fix the problem in your marriage, that's still issues you have to work on. Took a long time to get there. Usually takes more than a minute to get back from it. Anytime you want to jump in, feel free. I keep seeing your mouth open. Sometimes I think you're yawning, but sometimes I think you're getting ready to say something. So Jesus, second question, Jesus tested Philip not to expose his failure, but to invite his faith. How does understanding God's testing as a loving invitation rather than a pass-fail exam change the way you would respond to difficult seasons in your walk with Christ? How does understanding God's testing as a loving invitation rather than a pass-fail exam change the way that you respond to difficult seasons in your walk with Christ?
It makes sense. You think about when you exercise, not that I exercise, but if I were to exercise, it would make my muscles really sore. And you're like, oh, why did I do that? But what else does it do? It strengthens them. And I think it's similar with our faith. When you walk through times that are challenging, it's strengthening to your faith if you can cling to God and trust along the way. I think that's the hard part, is the trusting.
We've got so many great examples in the body, but you're right. The exercise of the body, what takes place in the human body when we exercise is we break down muscle tissue. That's the tired, overexertion. And when we're resting, our body is rebuilding stronger. We don't get big muscles just because we want big muscles. We get that when we use the ones we have to exhaustion, and the body rebuilds them stronger. That doesn't happen as easily as you get older. The body doesn't recover as quickly and all those kinds of things, but that's the way God designed the system. And it's just this great example for our spiritual life too. Just like the exercise of our physical body exhausts us, and then our body rebuilds that, and then we're stronger than we were before. Spiritually, it's a similar kind of process that's taking place. So when he's testing us, in whatever way you want to term that, part of that is he's helping us to get stronger spiritually.
And he already knew what he was doing with Philip. I can imagine being in Philip's position and being like, what?
I don't have that much money.
But he knew, well, just wait and just watch and see what I'm going to do. And then it's going to knock you out.
It reminds me of the song that Esther sang with, I've forgotten his name. If I never had a problem, I would never know that he could solve
That
it.
he could solve them.
What is his name?
Andre Crouch.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah. From My Teenage Years.
Yes,
Yes, Travis, long before you knew there was a world. So, let's keep going. We'll read 7. Let's go ahead and read 7 through 14. We'll finish this account.
Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon, Peter's brother, said to him, there is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. But what are they among so many? Then Jesus said, make the people sit down. Now there was such was much grass in the place. So the men sat down, in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to the disciples, and the disciples to those sitting down, and likewise of the fish, as much as they wanted. So when they were filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, so that nothing is lost. Therefore they gathered them up, and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the sign that Jesus did, said, this is truly the prophet who is come into the world.
Thank you.
To my defense, she made my words small. I'm having trouble reading. We started reading together.
To my defense, I
She
told
started
him he
reading
could enlarge
together.
them again, and he said, this is all right.
In the dark room, laying in bed it is, but here, my words were much longer. She's like, why are your words so big?
Cooperating with human willingness. There's a lad here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But Jesus, that's nothing like what 5,000 people need. 5,000 men, plus the families. Christ's deity,
It's a lot like what
let me show you.
people need.
Let me show you.
It's a lot like what people need, just
Mhm.
multiply.
And I've always wondered about the lad. Like, why is, when you hear lad, it makes you think young child.
He's a boy.
And
Yeah.
he's the only one
It's
that
the right
comes up
word.
with any,
Well,
why does he have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish?
Well, note, if you would, Andrew has found this kid. Now, for all we know, maybe this kid's been slinging his lunch sack, the little cloth bag that he has on his side, and he's been playing with it all day, throwing it up and catching it. You know what kids are like. And he's a kid. And Andrew notices, or the kid says, hey, one way or the other. But you can imagine that those barley loaves aren't in pristine condition anymore. I mean, have you ever put a bag in a kid's hand and asked them to go somewhere? It doesn't, yeah. I can just see that, It does use the correct word, that he was a child, so
Even
that's
if-
right
even
to
if
think of
it's
that.
Nowadays, they wouldn't even do that. They just drag it.
Even if they weren't shaking it and spinning around and everything, just the way kids run, they've got the bag in their hand and they're running all over the place. That bag is getting jostled back.
This is his lunch. He's hung on to the rest of his lunch long enough. So
And maybe other people did bring food, pack their own lunch too, but this is the one that Andrew found that had food. That was
But isn't 5 barley loaves a little much for a single lad?
They're not
Depends on
like,
what size
they're
they
not
are.
like,
they'd probably be about this big, actually,
It's more like a roll.
Yeah.
it's kind of like,
the size of a cookie.
It
it's
was
about the size of a
probably,
kid's meal.
and it could have been his lunch and his dinner.
Yeah.
His food for the whole day. But
I mean, because the 1970s was not the first decade where parents said, be home by time for dinner. when the sun starts going down, you need to be back home. Yeah. The 1970s wasn't the first time that happened.
Andrew smelled it.
Perhaps. But Andrew, get that thought. Andrew said, I found something. Now, put yourself in Andrew's position. There's bunches and bunches of people here. You may not know there's 5,000 yet, but you know there's an amazingly large number of people here.
Why would you even suggest?
And Jesus has said, where can we buy bread? So Andrew comes and says, I found this among the people.
He
Practical?
He had to have an inkling.
He did. I think he did.
And what if the lad did too?
I think he probably did too. He may not have been the only one who had some food with him, but he was the only one willing to give
Yeah.
what he had.
Why did Peter come to Jesus? We get in the gospel because Andrew went to him and said, we have found the Messiah.
Yeah.
When they watched.
And maybe he was there at the wedding, then he turned the water to wine. And that miracle. So he
That
could do-
has already happened,
yeah,
right?
And
Yeah.
he could do a lot with little.
Well, and plus,
That was kind of my thinking, is the
Peter-
lad could have had an idea. I mean, he's seen him perform who says
I'm out here
that-
following this guy because he does miracles.
Yeah.
I want to see one of these miracles.
Yeah, who's to say that he didn't put it in his heart?
Simon
That-
had one of those miracles. Cast your nets back out into the water. We've been fishing all night long, but because you said so, we'll cast them out one more time. And they brought in a load that they
Flipped
could
the boat.
barely bring it in between them.
But Andrew's the only one that says, I found
Yeah.
a kid's meal.
There was a sermon years ago about Andrew, that he's always bringing someone to Jesus. I think-
He was good for that.
I think the other one was
We had a Sunday school emphasis years ago,
people from
be an
other
Andrew.
countries. Yeah.
And it was about that, bringing the one who's always bringing other people to Jesus. Here, I want you to meet Jesus.
And they may not have anticipated anything. They were like, hey kid, Jesus needs your food. Okay.
Uh-huh.
We
Maybe
don't-
he didn't like any of that anyway.
Good.
It's barley bread.
I never noticed
I don't know what you're
before.
gonna do with this, but
They had
this is what I
bread left
found.
over, but no fish.
Hmm.
I had never noticed that before. Leftover bread, no leftover fish.
With the fragments of the 5 barley loaves.
Yeah.
It doesn't say anything about the fish, does it?
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever noticed that.
Yeah.
Well,
You gotta eat the fish right now. You can't save that.
I mean, have you ever tried to save sardines?
Yeah.
And when we're talking about fish, that's probably not very different from the size of the fish, sardine size. These are not largemouth bass
Yeah.
that the kids carrying around.
500-pound tuna.
Yeah. So, in this passage, what we get is a great picture of our theology, our cooperation with grace. Jesus is getting ready to do something amazing. And he says, why don't you help me? And we get to do that. And I've used the illustration many times. It was like a dad who, you know, his son wants to help, and it would go faster if he didn't. It wouldn't take as much time because I could get through this quickly. But to come alongside and learn and be a part of what God is doing, I think that's what God does with us all the time. I don't have to have you to do what I want to do. But it's good for you if you join me in what I'm doing. Does that make sense? I want to make sure it makes sense.
Jesus already knew what he was going to do. Andrew didn't have
So
to
you
come
would ask the
forward.
question, why did he even ask?
Andrew didn't have to come forward with the little boy. Jesus already knew there was somebody there with loaves and fishes. He just let Andrew
Go and find him.
help, be a part of it. This is what we have.
You think that bolstered Andrew's faith?
And that was the point.
His faith was mixed with honest doubt. But what is that among so many?
With so many.
That's
Let me
humanity.
show you what I can do with so little.
And I think those moments of doubt are so universal.
I believe you're correct.
But, God doesn't smite us for them, thankfully.
Can you read that first sentence again, before the question?
Andrew's faith was mixed with honest doubt. Andrew's faith was mixed with honest doubt. But what are they among so many? God's grace meets us in the tension between a willing spirit and a doubtful mind.
I believe, Lord, help
Help my unbelief. God's grace meets us in that tension between a willing spirit, I'm willing, and the doubtful mind that says, but I don't know how it's going to happen.
I'm gonna do it.
It'd have to be a miracle.
Right up my alley.
Nice, yeah. I can provide that.
Yeah. So, in verses 11 and 12, we get the passage that talks about gathering so that nothing is lost. When they were filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. What does that mean?
The harvest is plentiful.
I don't know that I follow that. That is true. I don't know if I follow it in this context, but
The virtue of thrift,
say again.
the virtue of thriftiness.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
This was, I realize it's just bread and fish. But
Yeah.
this was something.
But it is a
this is
staple
something that
of their
was
meals.
Holy.
This is something that was touched by Jesus Christ, a miracle made.
Think about what's going to happen.
He wanted all of it saved. He didn't want to lose a single one. When you put that in the context of humanity, he wants every person that has been touched by his spirit saved. He doesn't want to lose a single one. Gather them all up.
Yeah.
What did they do with the holy manna?
He saved some.
Gather as much as you need
Yeah.
for the day.
And they did. They put a jar in
The ark.
the ark.
But that was only one.
Yeah. But they
The
got
rest of it was, don't save it till tomorrow.
Right.
It went away as soon as the sun came up hot enough to burn it off.
Do you think those 12 baskets?
Disappeared.
Bible doesn't tell us where they went.
Because the people ate and were full, so the rest of it just kind of.
Well, the Bible doesn't tell us where it went. I mean, for all we know,
People.
it may
I
have.
just kind of
Doggy
figured
I
it.
would
bag.
think it would go
Yeah.
back with the people.
I would think so
To
too,
Yeah.
or we don't.
I would think it's likely that he would have sent it away.
How
Yeah.
long did they
To-go
stay?
boxes.
Maybe they got hungry again.
Right.
Here, there's still some
Yeah.
on the
On your way
table.
home. Yeah. But they were supposed to gather it that nothing would be lost. And that nothing would be lost. What Christ did was miraculous. What he did doesn't happen naturally. But if we think about it in terms of what took place, he made matter expand. He took some bread and some fish and made it enough for the whole crowd and more. And so just like Catherine was saying, this is the holy thing that Christ has imbued with his glory to make it enough for all the crowd. So it's more than just bread, and it's more than just fish. I'm not trying to blow your mind, but Jesus gave thanks before a single loaf had been multiplied, an act of faith that preceded evidence. Wesley described this kind of holy expectation as the faith of a child. How does a posture of thankfulness before the miracle actually prepare the heart to receive the miracle? How does a posture of thankfulness before the miracle actually prepare the heart to receive the miracle?
It's kind of like calling things that are not as if they are.
Okay, that's scriptural.
It's a matter of belief. God can do it. Therefore it's already done.
I live in time, but God doesn't. So thank you for what you've already done.
You use the reference of children and the way they look at their parents or adults. They think we can do anything.
Well, I mean, mom and dad provide food. I mean, they practically make it.
If I say I'm thankful to God for what he will do in advance, and then I get to see it come to fruition, my gratitude for getting to see it come into fruition would be greatly deepened.
Should.
I'm grateful already in my prayer in advance, but then when I see it come to pass, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude.
Even more.
Almost a expectation, kind of.
Well, we're told to pray in faith, believing. Some groups take that a bit farther than others. If you say it's going to happen, then it's going to happen, as if God's will has little or nothing to do with it.
Name it abundant.
Since we picked on our Calvinist brothers and sisters at the beginning, this is the moment that we can kind of pick on our Pentecostal and charismatic brothers and sisters who are very into the name it and claim it. My mom and dad attended a charismatic church, Pentecostal church. I'm not sure I would have said it's charismatic. There is a slight difference between the two. Slight to me, not to them. But when mom had cancer, she was at the same church both times she had cancer, and the process that the people of the church, as they were involved with her, was basically name it, claim it. And mom had a list of scriptures that she'd been given, claim these, speak them out loud 2 or 3 times a day, claim those promises. I remember one of them is the I shall live and not die. I remember hearing that several times. But I don't think our requests nor our thankfulness for what he's already done that I haven't yet witnessed, I don't think that obligates him to do my will instead of his. I think that's a dangerous place to be if we're not cautious. And I don't want to be. I also don't want to be on the other end of that says, well, we always have to say, in your will. We never get to say, Lord, this is what I want. I do believe that we're supposed to let him know what we want, as well as, but more than what I want your will. Above my desire, I want your will. And that was Jesus' prayer before the cross and the prayer in Gethsemane.
And I think if we can take ourselves out of the equation, so to speak, when you're thinking about the will of God, it all should come to him. Is this thing that I'm asking God for, does that have anything to do with the salvation of anyone else? 'Cause I think
My red Mustang convertible, you mean, that may not...
I think conveniences we pray for sometimes because we do make our requests known to God, and I think he wants that.
Mm-hmm.
But
One of my friends at the time...
convenience comes at the cost of someone else's soul.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
One of my friends at the time when we were praying for my mom, she was at the church that I was at, this lady and her sister, they had been raised Nazarenes, but they had gotten into the Pentecostal church and they had come back to the Church of the Nazarene. So they were still really Pentecostal in a lot of ways. And they talked with my mom. They were very good friends with my mom that she'd come and visit and stuff. And I heard her say to her grandson, who was probably maybe Hazel's age, she said to her grandson, he said he really wanted a bicycle. And she said, well, if you want a bicycle, pray and ask God. And if you claim it, he's going to get you a bicycle. And I really struggle with that.
That's an interesting message to give to a child.
It is. It is, because I don't think it's accurate. I think we need, yes, you want a bicycle, pray and ask God to give you a bicycle. But remember, he may know why you shouldn't have one yet, or where it should come from, not the place you think or the time you think. And if you put it in his hands, he knows what you want. You put it in his hands, and he'll do the very best thing at the best time.
And if you're not a failure if it doesn't come right now.
Well, because I couldn't save myself, I can't save you. I can't provide all of those things that I need. I need to be able to trust Jesus. And to trust him means that there are times when I have to say, you know best. Even if I'm thinking, wow, I'd really like this. I really think this is what I need right now. And we need a lot that, like Emily was saying, we may not need all of those things. But if I'm willing to say, I'm going to put my needs beneath your desire, your will, and let you work it out the way that you want to, God. Even if it never happens the way that I think that I need. I trust you. And it doesn't hurt hurt my faith that that it hasn't happened, that I haven't seen it yet, because my faith is in Him, not in what He can do for me. And that's that's a distinction that I think we don't make often enough. The people followed Him because of the miracles. But when He started talking about hard things, crowds stopped following Him and walked away. Because they were following Him for what He could do for them. Hey, if He's doing miracles,
Free food, y'all.
Yeah.
He healed my cousin.
man, my back hurts. So, yeah. So, the instruction to gather up the fragments, that nothing be lost, speaks to holy stewardship, for one. Receiving the fullness of God's grace and wasting none of it. In our tradition, entire sanctification is sometimes described as being filled completely. What fragments of grace in your life might still be ungathered?
That's neat.
What fragments of grace in your life might still be ungathered?
I have bits and pieces of everything everywhere.
Think of it like the manna.
Absolutely.
And where's the manna laying that you haven't yet picked it up? I think it's a legitimate question. It may not be an easy question to answer, but
Yeah, that one requires.
thought. Let's pray.
He wouldn't have gathered it up, could have been like, he overdid it. If you just throw it on the ground and it doesn't matter anymore because everybody had enough, he did too much.
That would be a really bad way to look at His grace, yeah.
Yeah.
He did more than we need, so we disregard the part that we didn't need, and it's not important.
Which brings another question. Where are we wasting His grace?
Mm.
Yeah.
Legitimate question as well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ready to pray? Thank you, Jesus, for your grace.
Yes.
Thank you for all the things that you have poured out in our lives. The manna that you have continually showered us with.
Yes.
Help us not to take it for granted. Lord, help us to gather what you've done for us, to not waste any, but use it for the purpose for which you created it in the first place. Glorify and honor your holy name through us. May your name be lifted high, for you alone are worthy.
Yes.
We pray it all in your precious name, Jesus. Do your will in us. In your precious name, Jesus, we ask it all. Amen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.